The Ultimate Warrior was one of the most bizarre and yet oddly captivating wrestlers of his era. Actually, of any era. Best remembered for his infectious energy and his over-the-top character. And it was that energy that fueled his promos. You never know what he'd say next, or what it was that he said last. The Ultimate Warrior spoke like an articulate alien. He knew what he was talking about, but to us mere mortals, everything was just a foreign concept. You never really knew what Warrior was saying when he spoke, but you just liked to hear him say it. A lot of the time it made no sense, and almost all of the time it was nonsense. Yet at the same time, I would only trust he himself to tell his absurd story. And luckily for us, or unluckily for us, he did. In his very short-lived comic series, the Ultimate Warrior attempts to tell his character's origins and depict and define that character. The comic series is pretty much what happens when you animate the Ultimate Warrior's already animated promos. It is disastrous, it is dysfunctional, but most importantly, it is Destrucity. You know, Destrucity, which is the planet the Ultimate Warrior is from, but it also means creating a truce between one's destiny and reality. There's so much mumbo-jumbo made up in these books that the Warrior also writes a mini dictionary throughout the issues, trying his best to explain what it is he's saying. It's like the guy's trying to be his own translator, but the problem is he still only speaks one of the two languages. These books are very, very wordy, and yet they don't really explain a whole lot of what's going on. I think they're trying to, but even after going through half the dictionary, they still can't convey a message, a point, a purpose, a plot. It is pretty much a visualization of an Ultimate Warrior promo. This is what this man was seeing in his own head when he was talking on the mic.
Kogan, as you traveled by conventional means, malfunctions. Do you, Hulk Hogan, try and comfort the normals that have even more fear? You are about to enter a world close to parts unknown.
Despite this feeling more like a novel than it does a comic book, there isn't a whole lot of story to tell. And the story that there is a bit unclear. Let me give you like a 1 to 2 sentence synopsis of each issue. In the first issue, the Ultimate Warrior skins his inner demons and uses their bloody remains on his face as face paint and his arm tassels.
Metal, dude.
We also learn that these former demons, now tassels, are actually called belief banners, and they can speak on their own for some reason. The book then cuts to the real world to see the Ultimate Warrior in a coma, with his crying wife by his side. And then that image is followed by a side profile of a block-headed character we've never seen before, and will only see once more after this, where he's quoted as saying, "Believe this."
I don't believe it!
It's hard to know what to make of this, because it's hard to even understand what it was he was going for in the first place. Then, after his final thoughts, there's a second, not related, not relevant, and not colored-in story that sees the spirit of the Ultimate Warrior save a woman from suicide by advising her to attend Warrior University. What a carny. I don't know what I'm supposed to take from that, so I choose to take nothing at all. The second issue doesn't get much better. As a matter of fact, it feels less like a second issue and more like the second part of the first issue. As the Warrior wakes up from the coma, he now lives in two realms. One in which he's taking on a bizarro version of the Warrior, which ultimately ends in that version becoming a child, for some reason, with the Warrior remarking, "As man falls to the animals, he reaches for the child within, mistaking weakness for compassion." And because of that, I think Warrior kills the kid, because he doesn't do weakness, and he sure doesn't do compassion. In issue 3, the Warrior's wheeled out of the hospital to see all of his adoring fans, which includes a little kid asking for an autograph. Without rhyme or reason, the Warrior lashes out at the child, causing his wife to try to comfort him. But it would seem that no good deed goes unpunished in Destrucity, as the warrior yells at her for daring to make excuses for him being rude to a child. Huh, that sounds kind of familiar.
It's Vince apology.
I mean, I'm humbly apologizing, but I'm not saying what I'm humbly apologizing for. It's like you're saying, kid.
I understand that.
Well, no, you don't, because I'm making a videotape to some kid. It's a apology.
It's a word.
Whatever I should have, it's supposed to have said to the guy, I wish I had said to the guy.
Meanwhile, in the other realm within his own mind, Warrior watches on as a plane goes down. So he does what any good hero would do, and laughs at their misfortune while justifying it in a narrative text box. Basically saying that to be a true hero, you must never help others and only help yourself. Yeah, I don't think that's true. It's probably not what a hero does, or should do, at least. That sounds a lot more like a villain's inner monologue than it does the words of a hero. Though at least I now know why someone once referred to him as a legend in his own mind. I mean, he literally is here. In the real world, Hellwig heads to the bar, where he proceeds to smash a glass over another man's face for daring to tap him on the shoulder. A bar fight breaks out, where of course the warrior easily bests the opposition, and that's how that issue ends. I don't know if a story has actually begun yet, and we're 3 issues into a 4.5 issue run. He teases issue 4 by saying, "Coming in issue 4, in your face, up your nose, riding your ass, cutting you no slack." I think I can honestly say that that statement, along with the impression that came with it, is not something anybody wants. No one wants that. That's not something anyone's looking to sign up for. When issue 4 did come out, it came out completely different from anything that came before it. And we'll discuss why in just a bit. Warrior is accused of various crimes. And when he looks in the mirror, he sees the man we saw at the end of issue 1. Which is confusing to me, because on one hand, I think this is supposed to suggest that this unnamed villain was somehow possessing the Ultimate Warrior. It would explain all of his bad behavior in the real world. But it's hard to say that when he's acted equally as selfish and awful in his made-up one along the way, with the warrior justifying his actions. The guy literally laughed at the death of strangers. In this issue, he also beats up Discount Hulk Hogan, because of course he does. So if you're a fan of pettiness in professional wrestling, this is the issue for you. The final issue of the comics isn't so much an issue as it is an art book. It's a holiday special that sees the warrior go from acting like Saint Nick to putting Saint Nick in a pretty compromising position. What is going on here? The pictures are done by different artists, and they don't depict any sort of story throughout, as Warrior goes from your friendly neighborhood superhero to the self-proclaimed hero jerk that he is in real life, in the comics. I would say the art is indicative of the time, what with the character having muscles on top of their muscles, and being completely disproportionate to how actual human beings look, but in this case I think it's actually pretty accurate to the source. Actually, come to think of it, just about everything here is accurate to the source, given that it comes from the mouth and mind of that source. The books are as bizarre as the man who is writing them, and in a lot of ways I find them indicative of the Ultimate Warrior character and the problems that plagued the man who played him, Jim Hellwig. Aside from the stories, these issues are chock full of full pages of text. Sometimes these pages are an attempt to further explain the unexplainable, but a lot of the time, they're Warrior boasting, bragging, and most importantly, burying. A lot of these paragraphs are just Warrior airing out his grievances. By the admission of anyone who met him in his heyday, he wasn't always the easiest person to get along with, making a lot of enemies in the industry and burning a lot of bridges along the way. He may have gone to a different industry, but he's still the same Warrior. Even within the panels of the page, you could find plenty of thinly veiled winks and nods that feel much more like blatant acknowledgments and slaps to the face of those he opposed. There's even plenty of times where Warrior is attacking the fans that made him famous, the one group of people he probably should have been grateful for. These Easter eggs are fun to me, but I think they're really indicative of how bitter Jim was for such a long period of time, and how unwilling he was to let go of grudges that, quite frankly, didn't need to be grudges. In the second issue, Warrior talks about how annoyed he is that no one seemed to understand what was going on in the first issue, where he basically tries to further explain the story his viewers just read. Much more importantly is that he mentions an incident where a writer suggested the old "keep it simple, stupid," which is a writing strategy. The Warrior mistook this as an insult toward his intelligence, and enraged attacked that man in a restaurant. Then in issue 3, he downtalks the previous artist that he's worked with, and literally puts out an ad asking for an artist who is looking to be paid fairly, i.e. significantly less than his previous artists. I have never seen this kind of behavior in print. In issue 4, Warrior takes 4 pages of his comic to completely bury Callahan and Smith, the 2 artists who put together issues 1 through 3, which is probably why that issue is now in a completely different art style, and also is now no longer colored in. Just to get the point across, this entry in the book is titled "Callahan is a Piece of Shit." This is where the Warrior chastises the artist for daring to be sick and needing of a surgery that delayed the release of the 3rd book. A book seemingly no one was waiting for, as each installment in the series saw less and less sales. He then goes on to threaten the artist, and act as if this threat to a sick man is some sort of act of bravery on his part. He then claims that he's not writing these 4 pages on his own accord, but instead to offer up a warning for others not to work with him, claiming that he wants to help the industry. Except that would go against his belief system, as a true hero doesn't help others. It would have been more consistent if he was just honest and said that he was helping himself. Most of the time, these writings are written against a strange background, which makes attempting to read them that much more challenging, as if the vocabulary wasn't getting that job done on its own. Though one thing is for sure, this is definitely a project Warrior was very passionate about. He claimed in interviews that this series was more important to him than his own wrestling career.
The comic book, compared to how important it is to you after the wrestling, say?
The comic book is more important to me.
And a big part of his agreement to come back to the WWF in 1996 surrounded the WWF promoting this comic series. It's an unrelenting, bizarre journey through the psyche of a cartoon madman and the madman that played him in real life. In my opinion, it is well worth the read, even if I'm still unsure what it was I just read. Ultimately, the Warrior comics are a more forgettable part of the man's unforgettable legacy. I'd highly suggest tracking them down and checking them out for yourself. So if you like this video and would be interested in seeing me take a look at other professional wrestlers turned comic book characters, there's more than you think, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
Wrestling's for dirtbags and lily pickers.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.